The year is 2011. A father and his 8-year-old daughter went on a summer trip to Alaska and never returned. Their car disappeared with them, and weeks of searching in the mountains and among the glaciers yielded no results. The case quickly went cold and became another tragedy in the official statistics. 9 years passed. In the winter, the fishermen saw a child's silhouette in the transparent body of the glacier. It was a teddy bear, a toy that the girl's mother recognized as a missing person. The ice, which had kept the secret, gave up the trail for the first time. And with it came the question, what really happened that summer in Alaska? The summer of 2011. 40-year-old Aaron Keller set out on a trip he had been planning for a long time. He worked as a mechanic in a small workshop and dreamed of showing his daughter what he had seen in his youth, the real Alaska, the wild places where human presence is lost among the boundless nature. His 8-year-old daughter, Emily, had finished second grade and had a long-awaited vacation. She took a small teddy bear with her on all her trips, which she called flops. The route ran from Anchorage deep into the northern regions. It was not a weekend excursion, but a multi-day trip. The plan was to drive along narrow roads that were lost among the mountains and tundra, staying at campsites, parking lots, or just in the car. The first stretches of road still seemed civilized: asphalt, a few cafes, a few gas stations. But after 100 miles, deserted spaces began to appear. The road narrowed, turned to gravel, and the car kicked up clouds of dust. Signs reminded us of the danger of encountering bears and moose. Service reports later noted that the roads Keller was traveling on were known as some of the most difficult, with no communication, unpredictable weather, and few places to stop. They spent the night mostly in the car. According to Emily's mother, her daughter was always afraid to fall asleep without flops, and even on the road she held the toy in her hands. This was confirmed by one of the photos found among the family's belongings. The girl is sitting in the back seat looking out the window, and next to her is a light teddy bear with a slightly twisted ear. The next day, they left the dense forests behind and drove into the valleys, where there was not a single building for miles. The mountains rose in dark walls, and heavy clouds swirled above them. Drivers who occasionally met on this road later recalled that Keller drove steadily, without haste, and stopped several times to take photos or check the map. The third day of the trip brought them to mountainous areas. The car climbed a serpentine path along the cliffs. Here, the connection disappeared completely. Only a short signal from the car radio remained. The weather was changing every hour. First the sun, then rain, which turned the primer into a slippery trap. In some places, fresh traces of rockfalls were visible. The last recorded stop was a small platform at the foot of the glacier. This was confirmed by photos from their camera, which were later found among their mother's belongings. The pictures show Emily in a jacket next to an information board with a brief summary of glacier movement. The girl is holding flops in her hands. This was the last known proof that they had reached this place. In Aaron's diary, which was later handed over to the police, there's an entry from that evening. The road is hard, but my daughter is holding up well. Tomorrow we will try to cross the pass. If everything goes according to plan, we will be on the river by the end of the week and turn south. This was his last note. After that date, there was no further confirmation. There were no calls, no signals from the phone, no new photos. Only a few witnesses recalled seeing their car on the road deep into the mountains, but the accuracy of those statements remained in question. Later, investigators emphasized that the trip looked carefully prepared. There was a spare tire, fuel cans, food, and water in the trunk. Aaron was well aware of the risks, but even experience and caution did not guarantee safety in Alaska. In a place where landslides, flash floods, or falling ice blocks occur daily, it only takes one mistake to disappear without a trace. The story that began as a long-awaited adventure for a father and daughter came to an end right there at the foot of the glacier. Only silence and uncertainty remained. On June 27, 2011, the connection with Aaron Keller and his 8-year-old daughter was cut off. The last time the man's cell phone was registered was near a small village at the entrance to a glacial pass. It was a brief system mark with no calls or messages. After that, there was silence, which was never interrupted again. The girl's mother, Sarah, recalled that she was waiting for at least a short signal that day. She knew that the connection in the mountains was unstable, but Aaron promised to send messages from time to time so that she would not worry. He wrote several times during the first days of the trip, and everything seemed fine. That's why, when she still hadn't heard from him by the evening of the 28th, her anxiety quickly turned to panic. The police report states, the complainant, the ex-wife of Aaron Keller, reported no contact for over a day. Her ex-husband last reported his intention to go further into the mountains. The child was with him. The case was officially registered as a potential disappearance. Sarah's anxiety was not unfounded. She and Aaron had divorced 3 years earlier. Their relationship remained strained. They were not at odds, but they often argued about their daughter's upbringing. Sarah believed that Aaron was too much of an adventurer, putting Emily at unnecessary risk. She recalled that in their arguments she called him a wilderness romantic who did not know how to stop. The plan for this trip became another stumbling block. Sarah was adamantly opposed to an 8-year-old child traveling for many days to areas where there was no communication or help. She suggested that Aaron spend the vacation closer to civilization, hiking on short routes, lakes, national parks with ranger supervision. But Aaron insisted that this was a chance to give his daughter an unforgettable experience, to teach her how to navigate nature, to show her the real Alaska. He promised that he had thought of everything: fuel, food, maps, radio. Sarah's words are preserved in the case documents. I was afraid that he was only technically prepared, but he didn't think about how tired or scared a child might be. It was an adventure for him. For me, it was a threat. The feeling of powerlessness was all the more intense when the connection was lost. Sarah called dozens of times with no answer. She wrote messages that went unread. Her phone calls to Aaron's friends and acquaintances confirmed that no one had heard from him since the morning of the 27th. In the first hours after the call, the police acted formally. They checked the nearest hotels and motels, sent out a description of the car, and made inquiries to gas stations within a few hundred miles. They did not find any evidence. The pickup truck Aaron was traveling in had disappeared, along with its passengers. The last confirmed route they had taken was toward the ice zone. The service records showed this. The last signal from the car phone was received in the area of the pass. Further movement is unknown. Possible technical failure, accident, or collapse. From the beginning, Sarah insisted that this was not like Aaron. She emphasized that he was stubborn, but he never put his daughter in outright danger. Her words were included in the case file. He may not have listened to me, but Emily was the most important thing to him. If he stopped talking, it meant something serious had happened. It was this week that the story that began as a long-awaited summer adventure turned into one of Alaska's most mysterious cases. All the subsequent events, the large-scale search, conflicting versions, years of fruitless investigations, began with the moment when their car last beeped at the glacier and disappeared into silence. When it became apparent that Aaron and his daughter had not been in contact for several days, search and rescue services were called in. In Alaska, such operations always start quickly because time is the main enemy. The longer a person is missing in the wilderness, the less likely they are to be found alive. In the first days of July, helicopters began flying over the mountainous areas. The pilots worked according to a special scheme: low flights over the valleys, scanning open areas, looking for any signs: shiny metal, tire tracks, abandoned items. Air crews described vast expanses of gray stone and white fields of ice stretching for tens of miles. A car could disappear there as easily as a stone in a river. Volunteers were working on the ground. Locals, tourists, and members of rescue teams were combing roadsides, parking lots, and forest clearings. They had maps with marked areas and moved in groups to avoid leaving any missed areas. The search dogs would lose the trail after a few hundred meters from the road. The report stated, "The tracks are broken. Probably the vehicle left the road or was hit by a landslide." At the same time, camps, tent sites, and motels were checked. No owner had seen either the man or the girl. The car was not seen anywhere either. For the police, this was a special signal. Not only the crew, but also the vehicle had disappeared. An accidental drive off the road rarely leaves zero traces. In a few weeks, the operation grew in scale. Units from other districts arrived to help. Dozens of people worked in the forests, spending hours checking every trail, river valley, and place where a landslide could have formed. But there was no result. The final documents of this stage state, Hundreds of miles of trails and roadsides were inspected, air operations were conducted, and dozens of volunteers were involved. The search object was not found. When the first versions began to be formed, the emphasis shifted to natural factors. The most likely option was that the car could have fallen into the river. The local waters are fast, and the current instantly carries away everything that falls into the channel. Even a large car can be far downstream in a few hours, and bodies and belongings can disappear without a trace. Another official version was that an accident could have occurred on a narrow serpentine road. The car could have plunged into a ravine and been buried under stones or ice. This would explain the complete absence of witnesses and findings. Sarah, the girl's mother, followed all the reports closely. For her, the search was a daily torment. She gave interviews, appealed to journalists, begged them not to stop their work. Her words were repeatedly quoted, "As long as we have not found any evidence, my daughter may be alive." Despite the large-scale efforts, August brought the first disappointments. The weather was deteriorating, the days were getting shorter, and the glaciers were covered with new layers of ice. The rescuers began to scale back the operation. As a result, several small groups remained, checking certain areas from time to time. Officially, the search phase ended without results. The report stated, "The probable cause of the disappearance is a road accident or a car falling into the river. The conditions of the region and natural factors could have destroyed all traces." For the family, it sounded like a verdict. No car, no body, no belongings. Only the official version that the elements swept them away as if they had never existed. When active searches yielded no results, investigators could only build hypotheses. Each new version sounded like a possible explanation, but none of them had any confirmation. They began to analyze the case from different angles, from the elements to the human factor. The first version was an attack by a wild animal. Alaska is an area where bears and wolves can be very close to humans. In such cases, the victim's body often disappears quickly. Predators drag the remains into the forest, and the rain sweeps away the traces. The memo stated, "Given the presence of bear territories, an attack cannot be ruled out." However, experts objected. Even in the worst-case scenario, there should have been traces of the victim's clothes, backpack, and torn items. Nothing was found here. The second hypothesis was even more controversial. The police department discussed whether Aaron had decided to disappear on purpose, taking his daughter with him. The idea sounded attractive to those who wanted to put the case to rest. An official note was preserved in the documents. It is possible that the man was planning a new life outside of civilization. The Chronicle indicated that he had long been interested in autonomous survival, collecting books about life in the wilderness. But witnesses who knew him personally called this version absurd. He loved nature, but he was not going to run away from the world. Sarah also categorically denied it. Aaron could be stubborn, but he would never deprive Emily of her mother. She was the center of his life. The third version is a crime. The materials contain notes about a possible encounter with dangerous people on the road. Some investigators pointed out that in remote areas, there are sometimes cases of violence or robbery of travelers. The car was missing, so it could have been stolen. However, no traces of the pickup being resold or appearing in other areas were found. The license plates were not recorded on the highways, and the car did not appear in any official or unofficial registry. All of these hypotheses remained pure speculation. None had any evidence. The protocols contained direct wording, no material evidence. This was the main problem. The case was gradually turning into a theoretical exercise. At the same time, the information wave continued. Newspapers published articles under the headlines, "Father and daughter disappeared among the ice," and TV channels showed interviews with volunteers and the girl's mother. But the more weeks passed, the less attention was paid. New cases of disappearances overlapped with old stories. In August, the search operation was effectively shut down. The official status of the case was a probable tragedy caused by the elements. There was no body, no car, no belongings, only the last signal from the glacier area. For Sarah, it sounded like a verdict without evidence. She was left alone with the unknown. Her words were quoted in the press dozens of times. "I cannot consider my daughter dead until I see the evidence. They just wrote them off as statistics. Indifference eventually prevailed inside the police station. The case was filed away. There were official versions, but none of them stood up to scrutiny. All paths led to a dead end. Thus, the disappearance of the father and child gradually turned into another cold case, waiting for an accidental breakthrough in the future. 9 years after the disappearance of Aaron Keller and his 8-year-old daughter, the case remained dead. Official materials were gathering dust in police archives. Local newspapers had long since stopped mentioning the case. For the system, it became just another line in the statistics of probable tragedies in the wild. For Sarah, the girl's mother, it was an open wound. She lived between two states, giving up hope and stubbornly denying the final end. The winter of 2020 was particularly severe. The glaciers were sliding down faster than usual, cracking and breaking off in massive blocks. In February, 2 local fishermen went out to the frozen lake near the ice field, where Aaron's phone had last signaled a few years earlier. They were used to seeing dark silhouettes of stones, branches, or frozen ice fragments under the clear ice, but this time, something else was glistening beneath the thickness. One of the men later recalled in an interview, "At first, we thought it was some kind of package or cloth brought in by the stream, but the shape seemed too recognizable. Right under the layer of transparent ice, a few steps from the place of the breakaway, there was a small object, paws, ears, and a slightly crooked head, the silhouette of a child's toy. They decided to call the police immediately. In Alaskan villages, news spreads instantly, and within a day, not only investigators but also journalists gathered around the glacier. The glacier, which had been hiding all traces of the missing for years, gave up something concrete for the first time. The specialists worked carefully. They melted the ice with special tools so as not to damage the find. When the toy was taken out, it turned out to be surprisingly well preserved. The light plush was darkened by moisture, but the shape remained intact. One ear was slightly twisted, a characteristic feature that Sarah recognized immediately. It was Flops, the teddy bear her daughter never went on a trip without. Official confirmation was not long in coming. The forensic report stated, "The plush toy found under a layer of ice was identified by the family as belonging to the missing child." For Sarah, this was both a blow and confirmation that her daughter was indeed there, among the glaciers, where everything came to an end. The discovery was of enormous importance to the investigation. It was the first time in 9 years that material evidence had appeared. Until then, there had only been theories about the accident, the river, and the crime. Not a single thing, not a single trace, nothing that could be shown in court or forensics. And suddenly, a child's toy, locked in a transparent sarcophagus of ice. Investigators noted that the place where the teddy bear was found was below the glacier flow. This meant that the object could travel inside the ice, eventually ending up on the surface near a split. But the question arose, if the toy came out, where was everything else? Where is the car? Where are the things? Where are the people? For the locals, the discovery sounded like an echo of an old legend. For years, they had been recalling the case when a father and daughter disappeared without a trace. Now they had proof in their icy hearts that their story was true, that they had not run away or hidden, but had fallen into the trap of the elements. Sarah came to the place of discovery in person. TV news footage showed a woman among a crowd of journalists holding a teddy bear wrapped in plastic. Her face showed both tears and relief. For her, it was the first proof that her daughter was really there. But there were still no answers. The police documents stated, "The discovery gives grounds to reopen the case. There is a possibility that other evidence may be stored in the ice." It was decided to conduct an additional survey of the area. Thus began a new stage in the story. 9 years later, the glacier revealed a piece of the truth for the first time. And it was this truth that relaunched the investigation mechanism, which seemed to have finally stopped. The discovery of the teddy bear under the ice layer instantly changed the status of the case. What had been considered an almost forgotten episode in the statistics of disappearances for 9 years suddenly took on a new life. The toy was transported to a forensic laboratory in Anchorage. It was wet with dark spots but intact. Experts worked carefully, trying to preserve even the smallest fibers. The test took place in several stages. First, they took photos and described all the characteristic features. The most distinctive feature was a slightly twisted ear, which distinguished Flops from other toys. Then, they analyzed the fabric. The fiber structure was consistent with the time of manufacture and did not contradict the mother's words, who said she had bought it before her daughter entered school. To be sure, they invited Sarah. She arrived at the laboratory in person. The report states, the mother recognized the toy, confirming that it was her daughter's favorite teddy bear, with which the child would not part. The scene is described in a dry and official manner, but for Sarah, it was more than a procedure. She saw an object that had been associated with her daughter for 9 years. The news showed footage of a woman sitting in the identification room, looking through the glass at a teddy bear and crying. Legally, this was enough to reopen the case. An entry was made in the police records. The newly discovered evidence that may belong to the missing child is the basis for intensifying the investigation. The case was reopened, and forensic scientists and geologists were involved. The discovery gave rise to a new official version. Aaron and Emily could have been caught in a glacial mudslide. The toy, trapped in the ice, was evidence that they were nearby at the time of the disaster. The documents state, "It is likely that the objects were captured by the ice flow. It is almost impossible to pull them to the surface." But at the same time, another question immediately arose. Why did only the toy appear? If the ice had really swallowed up the car and the people, then more should have come to the surface over time. Clothes, metal parts of the car, personal belongings. But for 9 years, nothing was found. Only Flops. This contradiction divided investigators into 2 camps. Some insisted that the processes inside the glacier are chaotic. It can move objects in different ways, throwing only part of them out. Others emphasized that the likelihood that only a soft toy was on the surface was too small. It looked more like a sign than an accident. Rumors immediately began to spread among the villagers. Some said that the toy could have been left there on purpose to mislead. Others saw it as symbolic, as if nature itself had given a reminder, but had not fully revealed the secret. For Sarah, these discussions did not matter. She told reporters, "Flops was with my daughter. That means she was really there. I don't need anything else to know that it's not a story." The case was officially reopened. A new expedition was sent to the glacier area. The search teams were tasked with drilling, scanning, and exploring the ice. Everyone expected that the first artifact would be followed by others. But at the same time, everyone realized that every day of searching here is a struggle against an unpredictable element. The toy became not just a piece of evidence, but a symbol. For investigators, it was a reminder that the case is still open. For the mother, it was the only material connection with her daughter. For the community, it was a sign that even a glacier cannot keep its secret forever. But the main question remained unanswered. If the ice only gave up Flops, where is the rest of the story? After identifying the toy, the authorities officially gave permission to re-examine the glacier. For this purpose, a special search team was engaged, which included forensic scientists, geologists, and rescuers with experience in Arctic conditions. The task was clear: to determine whether there were other objects under the ice that could be related to the disappearance of Aaron Keller and his daughter. The study area was difficult. The glacier, which had been slowly sliding down for several years, had many cracks and dangerous cavities. The report stated, "Work should be carried out with caution, as any drilling could cause localized collapses." The team set up a base camp at a safe distance and began preparing the equipment. The first step was to use ground-penetrating radar, a device that scans the ice and detects foreign objects. The screen showed fuzzy spots that could indicate the presence of metal or cavities. At a depth of several tens of meters, echoes similar to large objects of regular shape were detected. In the official documents, this was labeled as anomalies probably related to metal structures. Then they started drilling. Special drills with a cooling system were used to avoid destroying the ice structure. The work progressed slowly. Each meter took hours. At a depth of about 25 meters, the drill hit a solid object. A metallic sound was recorded on video and in the protocols. This confirmed the suspicions. There might be a car under the glacier. Attempts to pull out or even inspect the object proved futile. The ice was too dense and the depth too deep for standard equipment. Any attempt at large-scale opening was fraught with disaster. The cracks could go further, causing an avalanche or the entire site to fall. The final report stated, "There is a high probability that there is a metal object of considerable size, compatible with the dimensions of the vehicle, under the ice layer. Direct access is not possible." This conclusion was key. It actually confirmed the theory that Aaron and Emily could have been killed in a sudden glacial slide. If the car was really under the ice, it would explain the absence of footprints on the surface and why nothing had been found for 9 years. But there were still doubts. Experts pointed out that in such cases, smaller items such as pieces of clothing and luggage are usually carried away along with the metal. Here, only one toy appeared. This sparked new discussions. Some geologists speculated that flops could have ended up closer to the surface by accident. The ice flow pushed it out. Others emphasized that this explanation was too convenient to be true. Despite all the controversy, the official version gained weight. The car with the father and daughter was under a layer of ice. This version allowed to put an end to the documents, but not to the hearts of those who were looking for the real answer. Sarah spoke out again. She said, "I want to know the truth. If there is a machine there, I need to see proof. Otherwise, it's just an assumption." Her words appeared in the headlines again, forcing the public to take an interest in a case that the authorities wanted to close. The new phase of the investigation ended where it began, with more questions than answers. The metal in the ice looked like a confirmation of the tragedy, but without real access, it remained another hypothesis in a long list. The conclusions of the expedition, which recorded metal echoes in the ice, were initially supposed to put the matter to rest. The report explicitly stated, "Probable presence of a vehicle under the ice layer. Direct access is not possible." At the official level, this looked like an answer, but instead of relief, doubts arose. The main question was simple. Why did only one object, a teddy bear, and no other things come to the surface from the ice? Researchers who had been working with similar collapses for years recognized that in such cases, they usually find more. Even if the car was buried deeply, the ice flow should have carried away small items, parts of luggage, clothes, metal trinkets. This strange selectivity has sparked a new wave of discussion. One of the geologist's office notes preserved, "The probability that only a soft toy came to the surface is too low. We need to consider other explanations." Some began to speculate that the bear could have been left there on purpose. The theory seemed unlikely, but it had its logic. If someone wanted to create the illusion that the child was under the glacier, it was enough to plant his favorite thing in the right place. Then the rest could be hidden, and the story itself would be perceived as a tragedy of the elements. For Sarah, this version sounded painful. She did not want to imagine that someone had used her daughter's toy for manipulation, but at the same time, her own doubts coincided with these assumptions. She told reporters, "My girl always held flops in her hands. If he came to the surface, where are the others? Why only him?" There were arguments within the investigation team. Some insisted that the processes in the glacier were chaotic and that an accident was quite possible. Others said that such a coincidence was too convenient not to be alarming. In particular, experts pointed out that the toy had no damage that could be expected after years of ice pressure. The plush had darkened, but the shape remained intact. It looked as if the teddy bear had not spent all 9 years in the ice, but had appeared much later. Discussions quickly went beyond scientific circles. Journalists picked up on the theory of possible third-party interference. The words "planted evidence" and "secret trail" appeared in newspaper headlines. The reports emphasized that if the version was confirmed, it would mean that the tragedy was not accidental, and someone was deliberately trying to hide the true circumstances of the disappearance. The official police reacted cautiously. In their comments, they stated, "The find remains evidence, even if its origin raises questions." Behind the scenes, however, investigators rediscovered an old possibility, that the father and daughter could have been victims of a crime, not the elements. Sarah received a wave of support from the public. People wrote to her saying that they believed the story was not over yet, that the truth was hidden. It was both a relief and a new burden for her. If someone really did leave the toy there on purpose, then her daughter might not have died immediately, and her fate was even worse. The version of third-party interference remained unconfirmed. But from that moment on, the case lost its status as a closed tragedy and became an active mystery again. The toy that was supposed to be the final proof turned into a cause of new doubts. Thus, the glacier not only preserved the silence of the past years, but also threw up a riddle that only complicated the investigation. Instead of answering the question, it raised another. Who left the bear on its surface, and why? When the version of the spontaneous disappearance began to crack under the pressure of contradictions, the journalists decided to act on their own. Against the backdrop of the sensational story of the toy and the glacier, they pulled up archives that had not been looked at for years. In old newspapers and court documents, they found a detail that changed the angle of the story. A few days before the trip, Aaron Keller had a conflict with local businessmen. It was about a small plot of land on the outskirts of one of the villages. The land had belonged to the Keller family since the 90s, but was virtually empty. Aaron used it from time to time as a stopping place during his travels. In 2011, businessmen who were planning a tourist complex there began to look at the area with interest. According to archival records, Aaron categorically refused to sell. He stated that the land should remain in his family's ownership. The conflict became public. The local newspaper published an article about the owner's stubbornness, which hinders the development of the region. Journalists also found the minutes of one of the meetings. It was recorded that Aaron got into a verbal argument with company representatives, after which one of the entrepreneurs threw a phrase. That kind of stubbornness can be costly. This recording was previously considered insignificant and was not included in the criminal case because it was not directly related to the disappearance. But after the teddy bear was found, this episode sounded different. If Aaron had a conflict with people who had money, influence, and vested interests, could they have been involved in his mysterious death? The version of a staged accident began to be actively discussed. Theoretically, the car could have been pushed to a dangerous place, and then the traces could have been hidden. The glacier and rivers would have done the rest, destroyed all the evidence. The toy could have been left as a symbol to make it seem as if the tragedy happened by accident. Official investigators reacted with restraint. Their comments were standard. We are checking all possible versions. But journalists already had headlines. The articles were titled, "The Disappearance of the Kellers, Business Interests and Ice," or "The Plot of Land That Caused the Tragedy." For Sarah, this information was a new blow. She had known about Aaron's arguments, but never thought they could be dangerous. Speaking to the press, she admitted, "Now I'm not sure it was just the elements. If someone really wanted to remove it, then my daughter was a hostage to someone else's games." The investigative archives that the journalists found did not provide direct evidence. They were only documents about negotiations, newspaper clippings, and witnesses' recollections. But in the context of the case, this was enough to shake the official version again. The question remained open. Was the glacier the only one to blame for the tragedy, or were there human motives behind its silence? The answer never came. However, the case gained publicity again, and each new line in the newspapers made it even more controversial. Almost a decade has passed since the disappearance of Aaron Keller and his 8-year-old daughter. During this time, the case has changed its status several times, from an active search operation to a cold archive, from an accidental discovery to sensational headlines. However, the ending was equally disappointing. No official response was ever given. Last year's police report stated, "The case is not closed, but the prospects for solving it remain minimal." Legally, it continued to exist, but for the system, it was just another unresolved case among hundreds of others. The only material evidence was a teddy bear found in an ice trap. It became a symbol of the tragedy, an object that personified everything the family had lost. For Sarah, it became a reminder of her daughter, whom she never saw again. For journalists, it was a visual image of an unsolved mystery. For the community, it is a sign that even the harshest elements cannot hide the truth forever, but they are not obliged to reveal it completely. Versions remained controversial. Some insisted that it was the elements, an ice slide, an accidental catastrophe. Others saw a human factor, a conflict over land, suspicious business interests, a possible setup. Still others believed that both factors were combined. The accident could have happened by accident, but the circumstances were deliberately used to hide something more. In fact, each side had arguments, but no one had evidence. The metal echoes under the glacier remained out of reach. The toy that was supposed to provide an answer raised even more questions. No body, no car, no personal belongings ever appeared. Sarah continued to live with an ambivalent feeling. She told journalists, "For me, the case will never be closed. Until I see the evidence, I will not know what happened to my girl." Her words echoed for all families who have faced similar tragedies in the wild. Locals sometimes talked about the glacier as a cold archive that holds answers but only gives away fragments. In this case, it gave away a toy and nothing else. Whether it was an accidental fragment of the disaster or a deliberate sign remained a mystery. As a result, the official position was simple. The case remains unsolved, but unofficially, it turned into a legend. Tourists who came to those places heard the story of the father and daughter who disappeared in the ice and the bear that came out 9 years later. The answer they had been waiting for so many years never came. The ice kept it inside, and perhaps it will never give it up.